I invite you to stand for the reading of the Gospel. Today coming from Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13. Jesus speaks and says, "And the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were wise, 5 of them were foolish. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight, there was a shout, 'Look, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him.' Then all the bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, 'Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out.' But the wise replied, 'No, there will not be enough oil for you and for us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves.' And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the other bridesmaids came also, saying, 'Lord, Lord, open to us.' But he replied, 'Truly I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour.'" Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. A week ago yesterday, I ran my 8th half marathon, the monumental half marathon in Indianapolis. I had not planned to run it, but I decided to do it after several conversations with Emily Sharp. A friend of hers, who is an avid runner, was going to run the monumental half and was going to run it with Emily. It was going to be Emily's first half marathon. And so she was very excited about it. And we talked about it because I was training for the Mill Race half marathon here in town. That's in October, and she was training for this one in November. And we would trade stories and training tips about what we were doing. Then in one conversation, Emily was sad to tell me that her friend, for reasons I don't remember, decided she was not going to run the race after all. So Emily was very disappointed, mainly because she wanted the company in the training and in the race itself, running her first 13.1-mile race. As she was sharing this, Rick Booth and I happened to be standing right there. Rick and I were both preparing for the Mill Race, and we looked at Emily, and on our own, each one of us said, "I'll run with you." And so that week, Rick and I signed up online for Emily's race in Indianapolis. At that point, we had about 7 weeks to go before her race. Then, as sometimes happens for runners, Emily got injured in training. And it was only a week and a half to go before the race. She strained her hip flexor. Let's just say it's a really important muscle to have when you're running. Her doctor, who is a runner also, treated her, instructed her on how to tape her hurt muscle, and ordered her to rest. No running until the race. After 12 weeks of training, really piling up the miles, it's just brutal to get hurt right before the race. You wonder if you're going to be able to run it at all. You wonder, will you be able to heal up enough? You wonder if you run hurt, whether this will be really a stupid idea. And you wonder if not training for that week and a half, is that going to just make you lose all your conditioning? Rick and I encouraged her. We were still running Mill Race, and we were encouraging her, and we said, "Look, even with a break in training, it's not going to sink your prospect of running your first race. We'll still run with you. In fact, we will each run at our own pace in that race, and we would keep touch with her with our cell phone or on text message. We would wait for her at the finish line. Actually, Rick would wait for both of us at the finish line. The morning of the race, we drove together out of Columbus at 5:45 in the morning. It was a cool, crisp morning, and the rain mercifully stayed away. We gathered at the starting line right by the state capitol. We took selfies. We encouraged one another. We battled the butterflies in the stomach, which always managed to show up before a race, and we waited. And when the time came, we put all our training to work. We each battled old injuries. We each played our own mind games to stay motivated. We each kept our focus on our respective goals for the race. I'm happy to say we all ran good races. We met our goals, and I'm especially happy and proud that Emily got her first half marathon done right around her goal time, even injured. I'm certain Jesus did not have half marathons in mind when he was sharing that parable in today's gospel about the women and the lamps. But I can tell you that that recent story about that race has made me see this parable in an entirely new light. Pun intended. I've always been bothered by these so-called wise bridesmaids in this story. Would it have killed them to share a little oil with them? I mean, really. And for that matter, what's the big deal about each one of them having a lamp to go with? Why can't two of them link arms and share one lamp? It's not like they're going to do brain surgery. They're just going from one side of town to the other. Commentators are also puzzled by that story, actually. For one thing, the story isn't really quite how weddings would take place or how shopping in a market would take place. There are enough details in it that just don't fit, which makes it actually more interesting, because that meant Jesus twisted a well-known or predictable scenario to make a point. But what was the point? Well, it's definitely a story about the realm of God. We definitely know that this is something that Jesus has been preparing the people for many, for a long time and with many different stories. So already you know that there's going to be an upside down nature to the story. There'll be an unexpected turn. Well, in this story, Jesus is telling the listeners that a big event is coming down the pike. It could be we believe that Jesus is coming back, and so we believe that this is the return that he is anticipating. It could be that it is an opportunity to live out our commitment to God that comes unexpectedly. And for that event, these bridesmaids, we believers, needed to stay awake and ready. And they all fell asleep. But only half were really ready when the time came, the ones that had the oil with them. So they were the ones that could go forward. They were ready to go forward. What if we think about the oil as a symbol for faith? I can't give somebody my faith when they might feel low on it, any more than I could trade or give some running hours to Emily as she was waiting for the race, hurt. In that sense, the wisdom of those bridesmaids was that they had trained, that they had been prepared, that they had brought enough of the necessary oil for the task ahead. The foolish ones, well, they didn't put in the time to prepare. And in a panic, they started doing what they needed to do and incredibly find oil, maybe in a 24-hour ancient convenience store. But even then, they missed somehow being on time for the event they longed for. Now, while that interpretation, I will grant you, doesn't solve all the questions in the parable, I think it offers us some insight into what Jesus was after, wanted us to feel about it. And so I'm back to the racing analogy, and now thinking about the fact that this is our stewardship celebration Sunday. And we think that we are all in this race of faith together as part of a congregation. Our daily growth in the faith, whether it's in fits and starts, whether it's a disciplined regimen or even it comes in unexpected ways. That is how we get ready. That is how we prepare for whatever it is that God has coming down the pike for us. That's the key to being wise, that is to be prepared. It's not about being fast. It's not about having the most faith. It's about being ready. And then, of course, it's about being awake. But in the parable, all 10 bridesmaids fall asleep. So it's fair to say that staying awake is going to be a challenge. It might even be something expected, something predictable, but not unsurmountable. So a minor injury won't derail the entire training. Catching a longer nap than necessary won't keep us from being ready, because basically we will be ready to go when the time comes. And the reason to be awake is not to miss what we've been anticipating. I can't help but hear in that a call from Jesus to be ready to perceive the opportunities in which we are going to be able to put all our preparation to work. These are opportunities for service and for ministry, for witnessing and being prophetic in our community. These are opportunities to encourage our fellow runners and also to feel the encouragement of those on the city sidewalks with signs and with cowbells, with a cheering, urging us as we each run our own race. Our stewardship celebration, our stewardship campaign has been around the theme of the hands and feet of God. And by that we mean that we as God's servants function as the hands and feet of God when we participate in ministry, caring for those in need, standing up for those who are oppressed, proclaiming God's love to all. Talking about being good stewards can't be something we keep to one Sunday out of the year or limit our conversation only to financial contributions. Instead, being good stewards is a way of living. It's a perspective on life as people of faith. It is how we value that all God has given us has come from God, and how we ponder faithful ways in which we honor God. It is a faithful life of generosity. It is central to who we are. Being good stewards depends on that parable's message, both to be awake and ready for when the opportunity shows up. And so we cheer each other on, we prepare together, we grow in our faith together. We deepen our connection to God and to one another. In awe of what God has done in us, in anticipation of what God will do through us, we say, thanks be to God. Amen.